This episode is brought to you by Modal Electronics, who enable you to play and perform powerful sound with their incredible synthesizers. You can enjoy vibrant wavetable patches with the Argon 8 series, or you can produce with state-of-the-art analog-style synth textures with the Cobalt 8 series. To check out Modal Electronics' incredible array of synthesizers, go to modalelectronics.com. Modal Electronics. Dare to sound different. I kind of want to start with your new album, Skellig, because it is fantastic. And I mean, I want to first start off with my favorite song on it, which is Deep Water Swim. How and when did you come up with that?
Well, most of Skellig, the record, was well written before we got anywhere close to recording the album. So the songs date back. The earliest one is Laughing Gas, which was written in about 2002, 2003. So wow. I'm always accumulating things, and things I don't know what to do with, I put to one side. Sometimes you write something that's a bit ahead of its time. Nothing else you're doing has caught up with it yet. So you need to find other things that will live with it. And so this record has been a labor of love that's stretched over many years anyway. But when it came down to recording, I determined that when we got to Scotland to record, I wanted to have a couple of new songs that even I didn't know, I'd never recorded or sung before. So something completely new to throw into the mix, just to see if the magic would bind around it. And because it was already going to be a sort of an adventure, we were going to capture everything live in a very short space of time. So these songs have been seasoned over many years. They were well known, and I knew them, but the singers knew a lot of them because we'd already played them live. So I wanted something that was completely a blank space, that when we got there, we would all be there on the same footing, because I'm normally a bit ahead because they're my songs. I've practiced. So that's the position I wanted to place myself in, one of sort of semi-improvisation. So we got there and I had two half-finished things, and I just thought, well, let's see how it goes. And then each night, as they all started drinking at about 1 o'clock in the morning and things were getting rowdy, I'd sort of slink off to my room and just try and get half an hour, 3/4 of an hour of writing in. Because there was such a vibe, it was a very giddy time. It was a phones off moment. We went to a very remote place on the east coast of Scotland. We were very well looked after. There was nothing to intrude, no domestic duties, no business phone calls, nothing. And it was just music, music, music all the time. And this wonderful communal atmosphere. I wasn't separate from everybody else in a nice hotel down the road while they all lived in a caravan. I was with them, we were eating together and just basically hanging out. And every day we were working up ideas and practicing, and then going in and capturing, and then lots of the songs.
Such a beautiful way to make an album.
Well, it's the old school way. It's the old school, and it could be done this time because the sonic aspect of the record, the decision to keep things very simple. So essentially, there were no headphones or constraints like that, or drums or bass. It was about everybody singing in very close proximity to me, around me and my guitar, or me and the piano. That was essentially how we recorded, so they were so close that there was spill on everything. You were getting a musical fact. That's what you get. That's the payoff. You get a time and a place and a thing and a feeling that you're all in together, and tied together as well by proximity, not by technology. So it was anyway, we were buoyant basically with this incredible music making, just non-stop music making. And then I was getting some progress with the lyrics. And Deep Water Swim, I had the chorus and maybe a couple of lines. And I didn't really, until after I'd written it and got back to London, 6 months later, I started to work out where the song was coming from. I didn't even really know. And with so many songs on the record, it's not like there's a narrative to follow, but there's a feeling there. And I was trying to sort of, like a sort of water dowsing, I was trying to work out what was the song, because it has such an emotion to it. What's informing that emotion? And I was a bit too close to it at the time, and it just became a thing that happened while we were there. But now I've come away from it, I think I get more of a sense of where it's coming from, which is, I'm not going to go into the personal details, but that song came together, and then on the very last day, we had a few things to finish off on the Friday morning. It was our last day of recording. I said, right, new song, it's this one. Well, I went up there with about 20 things in the bag, and we basically tried to record about 15. And two of the things were these unfinished songs. So Deepwater Swim happened while we were there, and a bit like the title track, Skellig, it's really just images suspended in a musical space. And recorded live at the piano, lots and lots of bleed from all the singers on the piano, and lots of piano on all the voices, and people just trying to get to grips with the breathing and the phrasing but it's I love the chord sequence, because it's got, you know, a lovely cluster kind of chord feel to it, tight chords, ambiguous chords, changing bass notes, the things that pianos can give you that are just so much easier to achieve with the piano. You can rub the bass note against the chord very easily, whereas it's harder to do it on a guitar. You have to be like a classical player who can really do all the fingers at the same time, because there's always something ringing that you don't want. But with pianos, you can be more. Anyway, so there's this lovely chord.
Yeah,
sequence.
that's so true, isn't it?
Where
you can do the underlying bass notes, which is for the type of singer-songwriter, heart and soul type of music that you make. It's really crucial, because the difference between having a certain bass note underneath a chord, literally changes everything.
Well, I'm such a primitive musician, really, and I really, it's means to an end for me. I want to write, and music is the vehicle that's going to get me there. So as I've gone on over 30 years, I've slowly sort of become more sophisticated. And one of the things that I've really, I really get off on is this suspended chords with changing bass notes. So like on that song, I'm not resolving the key kind of thing. A lot of the time I'm staying away from the root note and just deliberately not giving it. And then when you get to the chorus, it's very resolved.
Yeah.
So you get this thing. So that was, but I just love the chorus so much. It's just such a lovely line. When I wrote it, it was one of those ones I just couldn't stop singing it to myself. I think we all felt it was like one of the high moments of the whole thing, because it was so gently delivered as well, like everything we did. There was no pressure, even with the new song and the clock ticking down. It just came together, and everyone got it. And then it was just hairs on the back of the neck stuff at this stage. And, and for me to hear the song, not only completing itself and ringing true for me, but to have 6 people sing it with me immediately, it was just incredible, So that was the thrill of making this record. And, every now and again, I buy myself a bit of space away from, let's just call it the commercial paradigm, and to journey just into an idea. And maybe that's all I'll want to do from now on. I don't know. Skellig seems to set the scene, and already I can see how I could go further into the poetry of music, so just the poetic potential for music. And I don't mean that a Dylan-esque poetry. I mean that music itself proposes a poetic atmosphere, and so hanging words inside that, not narrating a story or making someone think a certain way, actually sort of the opposite, allowing their brain to make their own sense out of the long array of images and the weird way that they seem to deliver emotion when they're not really connected to a story. I mean, so it's it's the music of words and their potential hanging in a musical space. So I've moved quite a long way over the years from the very rudimentary approach that I had at the beginning, which was really just about finding a melody to convey the words, or rather finding words to join to the melody. And now I'm trying to, I'm sort of, I don't want to intellectualize it too much, but I'm sort of thinking on it from different angles, and I've noticed from successes with songs just how far you can take it and how little you have to worry about trying to make it make sense I think it does have to ring true though. So there's just saying things because they sound good doesn't wash. It's not that. It's there's got to be a root to the thing. The tap root for the song has to get down to where it matters. So that's the important part.
That's really interesting. How you've come to think of it and how it's evolved. When did you record this?
So the recording took place in April 2018. All right. So I'd been waiting for an opportunity to record the songs when the album cycle sort of broke, because this was something sort of different. I knew I've got my home studio, which is where I am at the moment, and I knew we had to go somewhere. I didn't want to be coming home at the end of the day. Not that I don't like anyone who lives here, but it's just I wanted to be free of having to think about anything. And it, even when I'm being selfish or putting my foot down and just working, if I get 3 full days a week from 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning till 6 or 7 at night, I'm doing well.
Really?
Because there's so many other things that come in.
Yeah.
Dogs, family, food, houses, insurance, business, all the stuff I've written, all the things I've done or I'm going to do, and all that then has attached to it that needs to be thought about, decided upon. The organism that is my working life is very demanding. And one of the things I want to do as I go along is make sure that maybe I could extend to 4 days a week. I think prioritizing the creative time over the other stuff, because time, I'm not saying time is running out, but my sense of time has changed, and it doesn't seem like a massive acreage that we've got stretching out, from the age of 25. You can't even see the finish line. It's like, no, okay, body's starting to get a bit gnarly here and there. There's no flight case on the band members. We've done our 5 million miles in the last 30 years, but we've been battered and squashed and sitting in buses and whatever. And there's obviously a price that you pay as you get a bit older. And it's not just that, it's just my kids are a bit older. There's a different phase going on. And the phase for me is like, I feel like I'm on a long, slow curve. It's an arc and I'm still going up. I don't think I've got to the top yet. And Skellig just encourages me that, there's more here. I just have to keep having faith in this exploratory process and to keep going in where you don't know what you're doing. And so that's my determination going forward. So anyway, so returning to the question, it was made in April 2018, 5 days recording in Edwyn Collins' studio on the east coast of Scotland. They kindly let us come up to use it. It's not really a sort of public studio. It's Edwyn's private place, but I saw a photo of it. I wanted to be somewhere separate from the world, in keeping with the title track, really, and the whole theme of the record of escape. So, you've got some incredible sounds going on with you.
I'm really, really sorry. I was thinking of going out to say, what on earth is going on? I did not choose this Airbnb, but it is nuts.
Do you ever listen to Late Junction?
I don't.
It's like a sort of experimental sort of.
I was wondering how much it's filtering through to you, because the Zoom filter is sometimes good, but there are dogs barking, people banging stuff. I'm so sorry, David. My head there's like smoke blowing out of my ears. I'm really, really sorry.
Just relax.
Hopefully it's not carrying through on your end with your recording.
No, it won't be.
It won't.
You're just getting my voice here. You're not going to be on it.
I'm not going to be on it. So that will be well, yeah, it's a lifesaver that you're actually, you know, able to get audio your end. That has actually saved this. There's some extraordinary noises going on here, so I'm sorry about that. But yeah, the escapism aspect of Skellig, I find myself constantly feeling critical of some new sounds that I'm hearing all the time in the charts, wherever else, because I keep up with everything and I do love it, but I feel, you know, my favorite type of music, it's like a return to my favorite type of music, Skellig. I don't feel that there are that many albums being made like this. I don't know why I feel that way. It's the fact that there's organic instrumentation. The melodies are so great. There's been some thought put into the lyrics. There's been some thought put into the concept as a whole. I don't know why that's so rare. When you were making it, you mentioned you didn't have phone. You didn't use phones?
Well, no, the rule was that when we went into the studio, the phones had to stay in the other building. So most people did it. The bass player found it hardest. You know, people are very addicted. It's, you know, It's like we'd all be in there waiting to record. I'd be like, "Where's Robbie?" You know, and it's like he's still in there, WhatsApping someone. You know, so some fucking crucial shit that he's got going on. But I think by and large it worked. So the only time we break every couple of hours, and then you can go and have a look at your phone, do what you got to do. We'll have a cup of tea. But while we're in the studio, I don't want to look at anyone. They're going, you know, I fucking hate that. I fucking hate it when I'm working with musicians and they're looking at their phones in the rehearsal room, in the studio. If it's at a break while we're, you know, you've just recorded something, you're all listening back to it, and some fucker's going, you know, like this. It's like, I'm like, just be present, because you gotta pay full attention. You never know when the shaft of light will penetrate, and when you see the way forward with a track. So, you know, you've got to have your wits about you. And this is where technology is both our friend, because it facilitates this sort of low cost, you know, easy access means of getting things down, and yet also the enemy, because even while I'm talking to you or recording something, there's fucking emails pinging in every 2 seconds or something. You know, it's a difficult thing. So returning to the concept of the monks and the extremes that they went to get, I'm still trying to get to the bottom of that story. I said to my friend, who's quite knowledgeable about history, you know, I need an early Christian scholar. And he said, we make sure you don't get 2 of them, because they'll be arguing and they'll be there till midnight. You'll never get a straight answer. So I think that the monks weren't just, it wasn't just a medieval competition who could go the furthest to get closest to God in a sort of Life of Brian type sort of the sort of, you know, a sort of a Monty Python film that was never made, the sort of Skellig monks version. I think also at that point, Christianity was an early thing. It was on the run. The Dark Ages were coming. There was a lot of book burning and monk burning, probably. And actually, that might have been a defensive move to get the fuck out onto this ridiculous piece of rock, which when you see it, and I've been close and looked at it from the coast, it's insane. I mean, and what everyone's told me about it, it's dizzyingly high for a start. You climb their hand-cut steps 200 or 300 meters to a small plateau. But this idea of escape permeates the whole album, and as well as the grit of the reality of staying. So renouncing the world on one hand and then embracing it in a different way on the other. So that there's a lot of detail, and I think there's a bit of yin and yang to the record, and I tried to symbolize that a little bit right from the off, with Skellig being the opening track, which is this sort of out into the beckoning blue. Basically at the beginning you sort of set off on your rowing boat and just drift into the mist, And then
Yeah.
the second track is Dunleary, the industrial port where basically you emigrate from, because there's nothing left in Ireland. They've just been, you know, shat on from a great height. As when I wrote this song, this was the financial crash 10 years ago, and I wasn't using Ireland as an example of itself. It was a metaphorical thing. Really, that song was driven by a rhyming scheme. But anyway, the idea of the East then going east, being forced out by a cold-hearted lover, the government, I suppose, is really what it is. I mean, the system that, you know, that sort of shat on all the little people so that the big people would be okay and things could carry on. You know, and that sense runs through the record as well, trying to grapple with, like, it's not enough to be, you know, I don't generally get on with the kind of people who head off to India to meditate type. Yeah, I'm like, well, who's going to stay here and fight? You know, it's like, fuck the government. That's how I feel. So it's like, I know that that's not how the karmic wheel's supposed to work, but I guess just pure escapism or pure whatever it is, that I don't have that facility. I can't find my way into all that contemplative religious stuff. Spirituality is something that's looser for me. And I sense it in music and, you know, poetry and humans. So it's a complex bag. Anyway, that's what I was trying to do on the record, was balance that yearning to go out to the rock, hand cut the steps and be up there. That's music for me, you know, the promontory. And then the other side, which is the sort of forced eviction. And we're all a part of that. We've all been evicted from something that surely was rightfully ours at some point. So it's anyway. That's, I don't know. You didn't ask me that question, but that's what you got as an answer.
Well, I found it very interesting. Anyway, but one of when there's an album this cohesive, you mentioned some tracks being written like way early, like 2002, 2003. How do you assemble an album when you've got tracks coming from different places? How do you know how to make it cohesive?
Well, I mean, because the ones I picked from before, so Skellig was written like a gateway song about 2008. And once I did the vocals and banked the vocals on it, I had a sort of eureka moment. Yes, you know, this song works fantastically well like this. It's really got me hypnotized. God, I've written other songs that might benefit from this treatment. So I went back and grabbed a couple that I just never knew what to do with, Laughing Gas being the most obvious example. And then moving forward, any time I got an idea that seemed to want to drift and didn't want to play an album game of maintaining momentum or tempo, it was something completely different, something with open space in it, then I thought, this will work. This could work in this other context. So I began to sort of just keep a stockpile, which was growing, and then adding to it, and occasionally thinking, like I did with the two songs, Spiral Arms and Deepwater Swim, that I wrote on site, taking the ideas almost of the whole body of work and expanding those. So one is a kind of falling into the universe song, and then Deepwater Swim is, I don't quite know what that one is, but it's somehow in keeping with the general mood and the general expansion of ideas. So I just, once it began, there were the key moments were obviously Skellig itself, the song, which then there were several others that were written straight after it. And then in 2013, I had this hunch that rather than me banking the vocals, I didn't want to sound like Bon Iver or something, you know, that he's done that so beautifully well. I thought, what I really want is to hear other people sing this and the kind of choral aspect. And the moment that happened, that was just, whoa, this is amazing. This is so much better and so much richer. And Dave Kitt, who added the low voice, that was a game-changing thing when he came in and sang the bass part, because that's a part that's very hard for me to do. I have to speed the track up to get down there, if you like.
Oh, right.
You know, because I can't sing that low. And that sounds a bit odd. you know, you can't put it up too high in the mix. It sounds a bit weird. So to actually have someone who could get down there. But anyway, so we had the girls doing what I would do as a falsetto, and then the boys sort of taking harmony parts and my part and backing that up, and then Dave right down the bottom. And there's this blend, but it wasn't just that. It was singing songs all the way through, where everyone's tied together by breath and holding the whole lyric. It's such a tender thing, you know, to share things in a musicianly way on stage or in a rehearsal room or in the studio is exciting enough. But when you're singing together in such an open sort of space as these songs, which just had a lovely drift to them, it's another level again. And when I heard that, anyway, on this tour, we had the most fantastic tour, trying this stuff out. Skellig, Dunleary, Laughing Gas, a couple of songs from Mutineers, Gulls and Incredible, which both fit this sort of template as well. The audience were, you know, enchanted by it, as were we. And it was probably one of the only times I felt no pressure to sort of dip into the back catalogue to keep everyone happy, because the music had such a sense of authority that they got it straight away. So that's how I just accrued these things slowly. And then at a certain point, when I decided to press go on trying to make the record, I began to focus on anything and everything I had and any ideas I had, and trying to make sure that they would work as well as I could possibly make them work in this new context.
And have you always done this with songs? Have you always collected them? And because some people feel quite like anxious to get their material out, you know, when they release something.
So as do I. You know, as do I. And that's one of the things that's very revealing and enriching about the fact that Time was the extra band member, and that the collaboration was a very good one, because these songs are seasoned, you know, and are known in a way that is it freed me in a sense, because we weren't looking for sonic arrangements. I was already settled on the fact we were going to keep it very simple. So yeah, this is unusual. I mean, you know, it may well be that I start placing things to one side in other contexts. I've got a few songs, you know, that I think are duets, and I thought it'd be great to go to Nashville and do a kind of duet record, something, you know, a bit alt country. So I've kind of got 4 or 5 things, 6 maybe, sitting to one side that have never really gone anywhere. And so things like that, you know, I will do it with certain things, but I think I'm at a slightly different moment in my creative life now, where my horizons are slightly changing. And this record is perhaps emblematic of that. I think my last record too it delved into a sort of, there's a sort of poetic side to things that's getting stronger, and it's sort of calling me on more clearly and more loudly, and compelling me more than perhaps the urge to sort of make pop songs or something. You know, but I, you know, at the same time I say that, you know, I after this record cycle, I might just feel like getting the band together and having a bit of fun.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of the pop side of things, I've always felt like anything that you've written has had a lot of depth to it. So, but it's not like, I don't feel like these records. So, Gold in a Brass Age, that's your last album, right? And was that produced by Ben de Vries, the same person who produced Skellig?
Yeah.
Was it because you said Skellig was recorded in 2018? So did you record these albums quite close together?
Well, yes. I mean, we were working together from 2016 and 17, making Gold in the Brass Age, and then I told Ben about this other project, and so then once we'd finished Gold in the Brass Age, they decided they weren't going to release it in the spring, and they pushed it back. And that gave me at least 6 months. And I said, right, let's focus on this. These are the songs, and this is what I want to do, and this is how I want to do it. So I brought him on, but it was a very different exercise. When we worked on Gold in the Brass Age, I used Ben and he's very much a musician. So, I used his musicianly ways with sound to change the forms I was making. So we worked very spontaneously. I was coming up with things and he was playing around with them and messing with them as they were happening. And then I was working on top of them and looping things. And so we had a kind of hybrid form, and his sense of playfulness and sort of subverting things and chopping things. I said, that cutting is going to be very much a part of the aesthetic. So unnatural cutting. So that it becomes a more natural thing. We're going to chop things so that the people know it's a chop, but that's part of the sound. So it's just like fast editing in film or something. So we're going to cut non-sequential things together, and we're going to try and. So I freed him up with a whole sort of lot of space and just let him go, and we got on like a house on fire. So making the Skellig record was very different. His job was more to sit back and make sure that it was coming across the way that I wanted it to. So he was the ears in the studio, just making sure everything was working as well. And, that we were recording everything properly. That's a bit of a danger when you're working as fast as we were with as many different inputs and, things like that something's not been recorded. We got back to London and there were a few problems on some of the songs. And I actually thought we'd have to re-record a couple of them. But Ben's so
really?
sort of, Ben's so undaunted. Like the rhythm guitar didn't record very well on a couple of songs, Spiral Arms being one. and he says, Dave, I think you're going to have to re-record that part. I'm like, Ben, it's not done to a click. I can't re-record this. It's just, this is insane. I mean, what are you asking me to do? If you'd have asked me that 25 years ago, I'd have just fuck off, forget it. This is impossible. You can't. It's sacrilege to go back and pretend to be in the moment. But he doesn't really think of it like that. So because he doesn't, it enabled me. I don't know, maybe I've moved on a bit. But actually, I thought, well, let's give it a go. Create a click. Well, let's grid the whole thing. Create a sort of click, even though it's out of time. And I'll try and just get in rhythm with the voice and what I can hear of the guitar in there, and just try and emulate it exactly. And actually, on a couple of songs, Accumulates and that one, I did manage to do it. And it was shit tight as well. It was, so we did loads of takes, obviously. Yeah, so it was like stuff like that, which made all the difference in the world to the sound of the song, because then we could feature this beautifully recorded bit of guitar rather than like, fuck, it sounds terrible. So it was, anyway, so there was lots of that stuff, technical stuff, the reality of recording a record in the old school way.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what people used to have to do. You overdub shit because there's too much spill or it's not recorded properly, and it's all lying, so it's just, you've got to be good at it though. And also I think it's the form in which the lie is made. It's very important. It's like a falsehood, but you've got to lie like you mean it.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I don't know, no matter what technology brings, I just find the old way of making records, the records that have been made the sort of old, in inverted commas, way, they sound better to me. I don't know why. One thing I wanted to ask you, and this is more of a general question. I really feel like you're one of those artists, and the artists like this are getting fewer and fewer, where you've got your own sound, you've got a distinct sound. Do you feel like you've maintained at least your kind of identity and your sonic identity throughout all of your catalog? Do you think you've done that effectively? Because to me, you're one of those artists who does do that, and it's not like, oh, you sound a bit like this person or that person. Well, was that easy to achieve? And when do you think you achieved it?
Well, I thank you. If I'd like to think that I have my own sound, but obviously earlier on I was very much emulating people that I admired. So there was a sort of Dylan-y, Van Morrison style sort of flavoring. I didn't know what other palette of sound to use, and White Ladder was a stepping off point where I kind of put the rockier side of things to one side and started to experiment more with programming, and actually used a click track successfully for the very first time. So it's I think that I have covered quite a lot of terrain. I mean, within my 12 records, there's a lot of difference. So if they do tie together and there is a sort of, well, obviously there's my voice at the center of everything. So
Yeah.
but you know, I try, and that's changed a lot. And that becomes almost like a limiting thing. And you know, why does he sing like that now? You know, yeah, it's nice to think that there is I just think it's important that each record is different. And if I could count back from this record, Skellig, Golden Brass Age, Mutineers, Foundling, Draw the Line, Life in Slow Motion, they all feel like very different records. So I don't think I've ever tried to repeat something as a template, and that's an important thing for me. But obviously beyond that, this is one of the things about changing my working process and very often working backwards from words into sound, which is something I do quite a lot these days. And the reason I'm so keen on it is it disables my sense of taste. So while I'm working, like the song I'm working on at the moment, for example, I don't actually know if it is interesting in a sort of melodic way at all or compelling. It's just, I'm just using my musical instincts to try and make it work. And I'm trying to get my written ideas into a piece of music. And so it's like... and
is that's different to the way that you've worked before? Yeah,
normally there would be a set of chords, which within it holds a rhythm, implies a rhythm, and beyond that there's a rhythmic melody that wants to accompany the chords, and then I have to find the words to fit the melody, and away you go. And then, you know, and that's the sort of way I always wrote. But as I've gone on more and more, I've looked at different ways to come up with the song, sometimes from a drum beat, sometimes from just some written words that I hear a bit of music in there. And I think, like the Birds of the High Arctic, you know, like that song on Mutineers, where that was written from that line, and I began to sing it and just put the chords with the thing so I could sing it. It wants to be sung like this. So what are the chords that go underneath that? That's that. So now I've got the end of the song. What's the song? And I had to sort of work backwards into this thing, and all the time not really knowing if it was of any interest at all. And when I then obviously dust settles, you get away from it, you play it to other people and they go, oh, I love this one. And you go, really? Okay, that's interesting. And then you see it as a recording, you start to record it, and then you get back from it. So do I, you know. So actually my melodic instincts are still there. I just didn't quite recognize them. So anyway, that it's a sort of technical point.
They're very, I mean, yeah, the melodies have always been, I think, you know, the melody is the main thing in music for me, and there's been some absolutely beautiful melodies over the years. One thing that I only found out recently, I'm quite ashamed to say, you know, I think it was only a couple of years I found this out, was kind of how, I don't know what the right word to use would be, convoluted or long-winded, or I don't know. It sounds like at the beginning of your career, because I would have been 10, you know, when White Ladder came out, and, you know, everybody that I knew had a copy, and my dad had a copy, and it was literally like the biggest thing in Britain. But it was quite a long route to becoming the established artist that you are now. Was that quite, did you get demoralized along the way? I mean, presumably at certain stages. And why was it such a long route to success, do you think?
There are lots of reasons, and to answer the first part of the question, yes, I did get very demoralized. Not immediately, but you know, the cumulative effect of sort of banging your head against a brick wall is a demoralizing one. I think when I started as a man with a guitar, a sort of earnest, heart on sleeve sort of type of, you know, for want of a better word, folky songwriter, with words to the fore. This was the time of the Summer of Love. It was like 1990, 91 and 92. And then Britpop and grunge. And, you know, no one really thought I didn't have a prayer of getting any kind of media coverage or in being invested in as something that might be viable even. So it was a strange time, the early 90s as well. It was a sort of people working out where music was going. So it certainly wasn't going in my direction. I think everyone was unanimous on that. So it was, but I think at the same time, it was a big adventure. I didn't have a plan or an agenda or, oh, I want to be selling records. I want to be big. I want to be this. I want to be that. I just wanted to do my thing. I didn't have a clue what the music business even entailed. I've just learned bits and bits basically from being stung. There's nothing like losing badly to sort of, right, okay, I won't do that again. So it was, and also I was very crude in my recordings. I didn't have a grip on how to record well. I had a certain energy and raw enthusiasm and lust for getting the song across, a commitment. I've always been 100% committed in everything I've sung. And, and that's what I like in every artist that I really, really love, is I believe every bloody word that they say, because I don't think they bother to sing it unless they really felt it, and so it was it was an education, put it that way. So it's good that it played out the way that it did in some senses, because it gave me at least a chance to see everything from the other side, the side where nothing works and you really are on a hiding to nothing a lot of the time. And it got worse and worse and worse and worse until it was Ireland that saved me, because from my very first couple of singles, I got some proper support in Ireland for them, and they picked up on me. There's a kind of salt of the earth kind of connection there, that they've still got a kind of a belief in traditional music and words and storytelling that's withered a little bit in the UK, for example. So they whatever it was, they took to me and my first album, and we got off on the right footing, and I built a following over there, and that really made me feel like there was a chance that things could work out. And of course it proved to be pivotal, because the success in Ireland caused the success everywhere else. It was this knock-on effect. So I was very, very fortunate. I've always been very lucky. I think I've had a few bad breaks in my life, and not everything about my life is a sort of cushy number, but the way all that worked out, and when White Leather came, I was at the point with that record where if that hadn't worked out, I think it was a time to reassess.
That interesting about Ireland, and apparently it's the best-selling album of all time in Ireland. So I hear, which is
a staggering statistic.
Amazing. But finally, I don't want to dwell on White Ladder too much, but I've got to ask: was it recorded in just like a living room or something? Is that?
Yeah, it was recorded in my
amazing.
It was recorded in my spare room, and I'm still recording at home now. I just like it more. I prefer home recording, and that's a whole subject in itself. But I like the DIY approach. Put it that way. And that's not just for making music or art. I like it in every way. I don't like the big corporate number and loads of people hanging around and witnesses who have no fucking investment whatsoever in what you're doing.
That is so good to hear. I mean, it's obvious anyway.
I like the intimacy, the feeling of a private moment in my own space that I'm recording something, the freedom to explore. First, I need the safety of my, I want it to be born in the sort of, it's like a home birth thing. That's what I'm basically, I'm all for the home birth.
I mean, that is a good analogy. It comes across, and it is one of the reasons why I think so many people have connected with your music. And I feel a bit like when I was talking about sort of Africa with Toto, or September to Earth, Wind and Fire, or I don't know. Whenever you speak to an artist and you bring up their biggest hit, I feel like it's like a crime against humanity in a way. So I want to encourage my listeners to go out and check out Skellig, which is a good album from start to finish. But it does provide, it's my favorite David Gray song, and since Alibi, I think, is Deep Water Swim. Do you have six songs?
Yeah.
Because let's do them.
I do, yeah. Off the top of my head, obviously they're not the greatest songs of all time, but they're all songs that mean something to me. So, and artists that I really dearly love. And I've started with Bill Callaghan and a song of his, which is a cover version of a very little known American singer called Kath Bloom. And it's called The Breeze, My Baby Cries. The Breeze / My Baby Cries. And it's a really, Bill's my sort of go-to guy these days. If I want to listen to something, I've probably spent more time listening to his music in the last 10 years than anybody else's. Well, I know I have, apart from my own. So this is a cover version, and the way he inhabits this song, in the first lines are, I'd like to touch you, but I've forgotten how. And it's beautifully tender, and it's a wonderful piece of songwriting. And then it has this strange sort of chorus, which is sometime in the summer, we'll lay down in the grass. And then the line, and the breeze will kill me. And the breeze will kill me, which is, you can't believe that Bill Callaghan didn't write the line, because it's just exactly the kind of thing that he would write. So I first heard the song not realizing it was a cover version, and only later found out, actually, oh, this is a Kath Bloom song. Anyway, it's a beautiful thing and utterly intriguing. And Bill, I feel, if there's not many people who've taken the song as a form and done something different with it, and he really has, he's more in line with literary figures in my mind. The way he writes, you could say Leonard Cohen. He's got this dry sense of humor, very beautiful humor, and a real edge as well when he wants to. So there's a cutting kind of wit and a gentleness, but he plays the tangents with ideas just better than anybody I've ever known. I mean, the way he goes on a tangent, it's just so surprising and so wonderful. It's like reading a short story. So this is the pleasure I get from his work. He's very much a words first artist. So I feel that the music, he just kind of makes it be a vehicle for his ideas. And then occasionally the music tells him, you want to go over here and slow down and sing this bit, and then kind of half say that bit. And he's got this kind of almost spoken style, low voice. It's lovely. It's very gentle, but also you've got to brace yourself. He doesn't pull any punches. So it's like Ray Carver, the short story writer, and Paul Auster, that kind of imagination, to twist things unexpectedly, like a great Alice Munro short story or something. He's got this gift anyway. So he's one of a kind. He's not like anybody else. His sort of, I guess, Will Oldham is a kind of more sort of well-known singer-songwriter who's kind of, one of the leading lights of the last 25, 30 years. Bill Callaghan, his records have got better and better and better and better and better, sonically more rich, the writing's deepening, the human, anyway, infusion that he sort of gives you is just, it's remarkable. So that was my first pick. And then as the second pick, I've got Nina Simone playing Suzanne, the Leonard Cohen song. And
wow, I haven't heard that version. She made a wonderful album. I mean, the problem with Nina's back catalogue is she's been on so many different labels. They're just compilation. Before the internet, compilation after compilation after compilation, live versions of this song and that song, because all her stuff's on different labels and it's chaos basically. And anyway, this song was on Songs of the Poets, where she also does a fantastic version of the Dylan song. Anyway, which one? Not one of the obvious ones. It's from Highway 61 Revisited. Oh, the words escape me. Anyway, this Suzanne version, it's not slow. It's this upbeat. She's such an incredible piano player. Yeah.
It's she plays this crazy riff. It's almost Latin American. It's like bum 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 dum 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 ba ding chicka ba ba da da. Anyway, it's so breezy, and then she delivers the song over the top of it. It's like, what? So she just totally changes the whole feeling of the song.
Wow.
But it's Nina, and she's my favorite singer of all time. So talk about
She was one of the greats, for sure.
Commitment to the song, always total. And I could have picked so many Bill Callaghan songs, so many Nina Simone songs, but I've picked this one because I've never listened to it and thought, oh, I felt tired of it. It's got that perpetual motion freshness thing that they captured. It's a strange hybrid form of everyone jamming along with this jaunty rhythm, and then her singing what's a beautiful song. The words are absolutely fantastic. I mean, so you don't get many better singer-songwriters than Leonard Cohen. Well, sort of poet first, songwriter second, really. So that was my first two. I think the next one I had was Van Morrison, because I was obsessed with Astral Weeks for a good few years, and it's probably the record I've listened to more than any other in my life. And it's like my analysis for this was, I've jotted this down. This just came to me when I thought we were going to be speaking about it. I thought I'd better prepare something different to say. Astral Weeks feels to me like the sort of early solar system. It's a protoplanetary disk of sort of rubble with the sun being Van Morrison. And I heard that when he was recording the album, it was so distracting, the modern jazz quartet just basically going nuts all around him, that he didn't have them in his cans. All he had was his own guitar and voice. So he just basically played and they just jammed the shit out of it all over him. It was like an experiment, essentially. So the Way Young Lovers Do is the track. I could have picked any of the songs on the record. The Way Young Lovers Do, because, I mean, Van had something at this time that was holy. I mean, it was William Wordsworth sort of electrified with the blues and soul and folk music sort of coursing through his veins. He was just Mr. Music. And there's this, I don't know of a stream of consciousness outpouring that can equal Astral Weeks. It's like a fabric, a garment that you've never seen, a fabric woven from stuff. It's like something that came from outer space. So Astral Weeks is the right title. It's like it's like hedgerows, sort of. It's like getting into a hedgerow. There's just stuff jutting out and sort of seed heads blowing in the wind. There's just all kind. It's so suggestive. But yeah, that was it. Protoplanetary
mind-blowing album.
The forms are sort of emergent, then they're dissolving, then they converge, and then it's. But anyway, this particular track's pretty straight ahead, but it's just swinging, and Van just sings it. I mean, it's a hallelujah moment. It's a hallelujah moment. He's singing this song for every teenager who's ever kissed a girl and just run around just so excited that they could jump 20 feet in the air. It's like it's got this energy that that I don't have anymore. I think the next song I picked was, sorry, I'm shouting. This is one of the lockdown things. I just shout all the time. I've turned into like Brian Blessed. It's just ridiculous. The excitement of communicating with other humans is too much. I think I had New Order Blue Monday because growing up, it was very hard. I live in the middle of nowhere in Wales, and it was very hard to get the DJ to play anything that you liked. And thank God for this song, because, they would always, because everybody, the rugby boys, the farmers, they all love this fucking song. It's brilliant, and so they put this thing on, and it's got two human elements in it, Peter Hook's bass and Bernard's vocals, but it's as lasting as any piece of folk music. It's never been bettered as a soundscape, as an idea. And there's this sort of fragile, poetic lyric that I've never really unraveled or unpacked. I don't know what it's about. I love the fact that I don't need to make any sense of it, because the music is so suggestive that the lyrics just need to be there, and this human needs to be there just to keep you there. But they managed to make it feel so human and yet so programmed. And I think for anyone who ever rails against the click track as the Satan's work. You know, it just isn't. It's entirely a mindset, and these guys were ready to tear it all up and program. Anyway, it's a work of genius. So and it saved my sort of teenage years. This, The Cure, and a couple of other things when you had a chance of getting them to play it, so you could go nuts, you know, rather than fucking whatever the shite was everyone else wanted to listen to. And so that would lead me down to track 5. Well, I changed this list about 15 times, not knowing I was never even going to be asked about it.
Well, I'm glad that you said so, because if you had sort of thought, oh, I did that, then I would have really hated to have like wasted your time. And plus, I am, you know, very, very curious about it, but I just felt like I had to ask some obvious questions.
It would be
in the legend spot, David.
You asked me.
Take the compliment.
You're very kind. So next after New Order, I've got another of my favorite records of all time, which is What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. So I've chosen Inner City Blues, which is the last track. And what I wanted to do, if this was what we've been talking about, I was going to suggest that if you take Bill Callaghan or Leonard Cohen as a starting point, the music is a vehicle for the words. And then you start to move down. And as I've already just said on the New Order track, that's not true. The words make the music feel different. And by the time you get to this, it's just the best bass line ever, apart from like maybe some dub tracks. It's a groove. Basically, it's a groove that could go on forever and you wouldn't get bored. And you know, as I've been such a lyric driven, a melody driven sort of writer, that, you know, as I've gone on, I've begun to appreciate more just the power of the rhythm and the groove and the bass line. And this track is just next level stuff. And one of the thrills, I'm not really a sort of musicologist kind of got to go to Elvis's grave, got to do this. I'm not that kind of guy. Got to go to Hibbing, Minnesota and see where Dylan was born. You know, I don't have that thing. It's like, I'm happy to deal with the myth and the music. And I believe there's a person in there somewhere. I don't think I'll ever get to meet them. Yeah. So, you know, so with this, we did find ourselves in Detroit 20 years ago on a snowy day, and the Motown Museum was open, and we've been back since, but it's nothing like the same now. It's been sort of Disneyfied. Yeah. When we went back then, you could actually touch the piano. And this is the piano that Marvin cut the record on, and the guy was so lovely with his time. We said, look, we're a band, we're here, we've got a gig at the Fox Theatre, we've come here, we're all, you know, and that the Shadows of Motown, that documentary was out.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's very good.
We'd all just seen it, so we were buzzed up to the max, and it was the perfect thing because it was such a cold, horrible day. There was hardly anyone there, and we got like a personal tour, and we were allowed into the control room, where all the feet have just worn the floor away from tapping away behind the desk. It's so basic, it's so small.
Yeah, I've been there. I've done that tour, but probably the more Disneyfied version. Yeah, it sounds awesome the way you did it.
It was amazing, and just loving that record so much. And when he sort of said, and this is where Marvin would sleep, he'd sleep on this sofa here, and Berry Gordy that's his bedroom there, and then the piano, and it was like, my God, you know, this is where they laid it down, and you're just like, this is nuts. I mean, I did get very excited about the fact that I was standing in the room where that record had been made. And
yeah, I'm not surprised.
And the piano is still there, and the stuff is still there, and that you don't get that experience that often. And anyway, what a magical record that is. And
undoubtedly, one of the best.
One voice in Motown supported Marvin on that record, and that was Stevie Wonder. Berry Gordy didn't want it to come out. He thought it was a suicidal sort of career move, because politicizing sort of what he had a pop brand, yeah, and you know, it was incredible that you know the doctoring of songs and the auditioning process and how everyone had to get their songs through the process, and then Berry would say who's going to record it and what the band is going to be, but I love the sort of nuts and bolts practicality of like, no, that's not good enough. Take it away, sort the chorus out, come back. brilliant. I mean, just brilliant. I mean, look at the stuff, look at the results.
Incredible.
So
But this was so different.
So different, and yet still so pop when you listen to what they were doing, and the story that the tour guide told us about the sax part, which I had heard before, that when I can't remember the guy's name now, came in and did the sax line, and that's just what he played when he walked in. That was his warm up, and Marvin said, just, you know, okay, yeah, this is the track. We'll play you the track again. He said he did a couple of warm ups, and Marvin said, thanks, man. And he said, but hey, I'm just learning the song. He said, I was just warming up. Will you warm up perfectly? Thanks. You know, that's what you've done.
I'm not surprised. You couldn't get any better. That is probably is the best sax riff of all time.
It's just,
or one of the best. I've got to stop declaring everything the best of all time.
But that's what we're supposed to be doing. Declaring.
It is. We are. That is the whole point of this podcast.
So I'm just going to touch the garment of something completely different as my last track, which I had to really choose a talk song because I think at a certain point in my life, my interest in music and recording began to deepen, and just extending this idea of reversing the way that you look at what music is and how it works. So Mark Hollis just uses his voice like a sort of Miles Davis trumpet, and you can't really tell what he's saying most of the time. It's just phonetic kind of phrasing, and the fact it's a human who's doing something and saying something, but always like he means it. I mean, but this deconstructing process was otherworldly. When you look at the records they were making in the early 80s, to suddenly go through The Color of Spring into, when you get to Spirit of Eden, you're just like, hang on, how fast did that happen? Because they pulled music apart, but it's you wonder how they made it, because it's kind of, I know from things I've been told about the recording process, how labored it was, you know, and yet what they ended up with, there's one track where they got a whole choir, like a male voice choir, to do this mad part. And then, you know, it cost a fortune, you know, they had them there for a couple of days. And then Mark Hollis said, no, I don't like it.
I mean, that shows putting the art first. The sunk cost fallacy doesn't work for him.
I heard a wonderful Mark Hollis story from one of the record guys at EMI, who said that I was asking, it was a Parlophone, someone who worked for Parlophone, and saying that when they were cutting one of these albums out at the Manor or wherever it was, like a sort of residential studio, they were there for months and months, and they'd go and drink at the same pub. And they went in there one day, and there was a sign up, and it said something like "No skinheads," or, you know, because they'd had a problem with some people coming in that maybe got into a fight or something. I don't know what the backstory was, but Mark Hollis, they'd been drinking, and Mark Hollis looked at the sign and went out to the barber's and got his head shaved, and came back, left his pint on the bar. And I don't know whether that's true or not, but that it wouldn't surprise you. He's awkward, gangly kind of customer. But yeah, this is music making of the highest order. And the track I've chosen, "I Believe in You," is the one where the boys' choir comes in. And my first engagement with this record was in the early 90s. I did listen to it at the time, but it didn't sink in, like I didn't get it immediately. I enjoyed The Color of Spring more than Spirit of Eden. I didn't, and then I went back to it because a friend of mine was obsessed with it, and then when I really began to listen and had started to record myself at this point, I began to understand just how incredible it sounded, for one thing, and just how randomized it, like these different bits it was, and yet a coherent thing. So how do you have this form? How do you make this kind of form? It seems that it's like a sculptor looking at a piece of stone and seeing the head. It's like it's sort of seeing space and just putting the bits of music in it that you need. it's a strange collaging that around some kind of feeling. They must have started somewhere. Quite how they started songs and ideas, I don't know, because it doesn't sound like it was a song. So everything working in reverse, and yet to incredible end result. And when the boys' choir come in and he just says the word spirit, and the it is. I think when my father died, again, it deepened my appreciation of this piece of music. And I don't know what he's trying to say. I don't know why he made this particular song. And I believe in you. Is there a religious aspect? Or is it just another human? It's funny how none of those things are important for someone who takes such care to make sure that words carry the weight that they need to and deliver. I just love so many things where I don't understand really what's going on. And that's a source of endless encouragement. Mystery, because where would we be without it? So this song, every time I've had a break from this song, I Believe in You, and I listen to it, it brings a tear to my eye because it's so perfect and so beautiful. When those boys choirs come in the chorus, and the little key change, and it's so simple in a way. It's just a couple of chords moving around, and then these close clusters of voices, and him's just saying the word spirit or singing it into the space. I mean, it's not like anything else. And I think as someone else, to see the journey they made over the course of 5 or 6 years in a sonic sense, it's like moon landing stuff, you know. It's like how the hell did they get to this place? It was really incredible. And it's not a path that's very easy to continue down because they took things to such extremes. It was such an enormous and sort of mind-bending commitment to make this strange, unearthly thing. You needed an obsessive presence at the beginning, and that has to be Mark Hollis, and then everybody else involved, Tim Freescreen and the rest of the band, also on the same page. They were willing to, but the stories of them having strobes and weird lights and stuff in the studio, it's just being dark. In the Spirit of Eden, they're just working continually in this sort of weird atmosphere, which would send anyone mad, in the hope that it's going to create something else. And well, they did. It does. There is a Spirit of Eden, something dark and sort of emerging from the earth. So it's an extraordinary record, and that was the one I was going to finish up with.
And that's on The Color of Spring.
No, it's on Spirit of Eden.
It's on Spirit of Eden. Yeah, because Color of Spring has a track called I Don't Believe in You.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this is I Believe in You.
Spirit, and this is I Believe in You on Spirit of Eden. I haven't listened to much Talk, so I'm really I'm really looking forward to listening to this. And Bill Callaghan as well. And I'm sure many of my listeners will definitely know exactly what you're talking about. But it's nice to be introduced to some stuff and revisit some stuff, like obviously Astral Weeks and Marvin Gaye.
I thought I'd spread it around a bit. I mean, I didn't want to get too sort of eclectic on you. I've kind of kept it.
You've kept it mostly mainstream.
I've kept it straight down the middle. I think the thing about Bill Callaghan is some of the songs are a bit weird. So, when I play people this track I chose for this, they go, "Oh, I really like this guy. Send me his name again. I'm going to listen to him." Then they go, "He's a bit weird, isn't he?" I'm like,
I wonder whether I'll have the same reaction.
I'm like, yes.
That's the point.
Well, it's just a part of Bill. He's not afraid to kind of go into mad territory. It's like, there's a freedom of ideas. It's a bit like Nick Cave or something. It's like, where's he going to go next? It's so, Anyway, it's great music. That's all I know, and it keeps me ticking over when I every record that comes out. But I'll leave you with one more piece of music. I've not put it on my top 6, but it's worth a listen because it's quite unlike anything I've ever heard before. It's by the Deep Listening Band, and it's called CCCC, which is Cistern Chapel Chants. And it's basically a bunch of musical adventurers, American sort of avant-garde musicians who discovered there was an enormous disused concrete cistern which stored about 20 million gallons of water empty under the earth, and they managed to get down there. And not only that, they managed to get some mics and instruments down there, and they made these recordings. And the album's called Ready Made Boomerang. So this is my Dave's tip, outside of what's great and what isn't. This is just extraordinary. So again, it's not for the faint-hearted, but I think anyone can appreciate the glory of this piece of music. Now, you've seen 2001: Space Odyssey. When they've got the choirs going and the psychedelia and the synths as he's traveling through time, and he's having visions and hallucinations, and the monolith is there. This is beyond that. I mean, that makes that piece of music seem pale, and it's beyond beyond
high claim.
Yeah, beyond Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois's Apollo record, which is one of my favorite things as well. So it's more out there than that, because they were playing inside what they described as an instrument, the cistern itself, which had a 45-second reverb. So a cathedral is usually an average of about 8 or 9 seconds. So this was nearly a minute. So they were very sparsely played, obviously. But if you made a note, you were really going to get some bad looks down there with your miner's helmet on, or whatever the fuck they look like. Anyway, that's my little tip, because it's the thing I've shared with all my friends in the last few weeks of lockdown. We've all kind of
gone. Did you discover that during lockdown?
I did, yeah. I did. So it's a recent discovery. So it's hot off the press. It's 1991. This record was recorded, but it's fresh as a daisy, and there's nothing else like it.
The ready-made boomerang. Well, I'm looking forward to listening to that. I wonder how you found that. But
my sources of listening are basically friends who would tell me things, and we trade, or that there's a fantastic program called Late Junction on Radio 3.
All right.
So that's an endless source of wonderful things, and if ever I'm struggling to think of what I want to listen to, or I don't listen to music that much, if the truth be told, but when I do suddenly feel like I need to hear something and I don't know what it is, I want it to be something I want to go somewhere. I've no idea what I'm going to hear. So they rarely let you down. It's mad. It's like Inuit techno, psychedelic gamelans, it's sort of insane world music, sort of artists playing with sound, electronics, dub. It goes, it's everywhere. But it's whoever's producing and doing the work on finding some of these nuggets. It's a special thing. So yeah, they do some themed programs, and the Subterranean one was very good.
Well, David, thank you so much for firstly for your superb album, Skellig.
Thank you.
And all the many years of music, but also for some excellent tips on music, which I'm looking forward to. Some of them that I did not expect. That's for sure. Okay. But I really appreciate your time.
All right, Tom.
Really nice to meet you. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
This episode is brought to you by Tingly. Tingly is on a mission to change the culture of gifting by encouraging everyone to give experiences rather than material things. Tingly's passionate team has handpicked the world's best experiences, including travel, adventure, romance, food, wine, and more, and brought them all together in one place. Tingly gives the recipient of the experience freedom of choice. Here's how it works. You purchase a gift box, Tingly sends an e-voucher or delivers a plastic-free gift box, and the recipient chooses from hundreds of experiences in over 100 different countries. There's no expiry date on any of Tingly's gift experiences. Tingly encourages us to give stories, not stuff, to treasure memories above possessions. To find out more, go to tingly.com. If you're enjoying the Greatest Music of All Time podcast, you can keep up to date with all of our latest episodes for free by subscribing. If you're watching on YouTube, the subscribe button is located at the top of the Tom Cridland YouTube page. It's also at the bottom right of any video that you watch on YouTube. If you're listening on an audio platform, such as Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can subscribe at the top of the page.